Welcome to the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. In this podcast, you will hear a discussion with writer-director Noah Baumbach from the film While We're Young, moderated by film critic Christy Lemire, recorded at the Landmark West LA.
I like our life as it is.
Yeah. I mean, if we wanted to take off to Paris tomorrow, we could.
If we're gonna do it, we should plan it at least a month in advance.
A month is still in the realm of spontaneity.
So, how long did you spend embedded with Bushwick hipsters to reach the level of authenticity that you have in your dialogue and your details?
You know, I met a handful of people in their 20s, but I you know, I just concocted it.
No, but the details are amazing. These people exist. They're in Williamsburg and they're in Bushwick and they wear ironic fedoras and facial hair. So, but what I appreciate is that you have a great affection for all of the various groups you depict here, whether it's the younger couple or Ben Stiller and Naomi Watts or the married couple with the baby. It's biting and it's detailed, but there's also an affection for them. So how do you find that balance in your writing?
I mean, I guess because I do have affection for all of them. I mean, you know, it's complicated because you meet Adam and Amanda sort of through Ben and Naomi. So you're kind of, I mean, I almost thought of them as like projections, you know, like in another movie they'd almost be ghosts or something. You know, they're like conjured up by this married couple to, you know, they don't know consciously something needs to be fixed, but they kind of will it to happen in some unconscious way. I mean, that was sort of, you know, in a way what I was thinking. And so I, you know, in that I also knew that, you know, as you say, I mean, if I was going to try to like, you know, really try to capture what's going on in Brooklyn or, you know, at that moment, it would date itself so quickly because it's moving so fast. So we looked at like old French movies and from the 60s, and there's an Eric Romer movie called La Collectionneuse that we used a lot of. Adam Driver looks a lot like the actor in that movie, and we sort of dressed him the same way. And so it really was sort of our made-up version, knowing that, you know, I mean, I felt like if I didn't know if anyone was rollerblading, but I felt like they will be, you know.
And it's production designed so beautifully, like the details as far as the albums and the CDs, and so how active were you in picking all of that specific stuff to make both of their worlds so vivid? Well,
it was fun to do, and Adam Stockhausen, who just won an Oscar, who I've worked with. I work with on Margot, and he works with Wes too. He did Grand Budapest, and we had just, you know, fun doing that. I mean, because the whole idea was their life is kind of an art show. So it was like we're just coming up with stuff, and, you know, some things were in the script, like the Rocky III poster was in the script, and you know, obviously the records and things like that. But we kind of found a lot of good stuff too. Right. That wall. I mean, there was like the thing that he collected typewriters, but that wall of typewriters was something Adam came up with.
And that whole section is edited so beautifully, that whole montage of the contrast of their lives. So I know that you started thinking about this right after Greenberg, but was there a moment that you were passing that imaginary line, that blurry line into your 40s, or was there a progression as far as realizing, I'm getting older, this is happening? Or was there like one moment that just snuck up on you and you realized, I've got to write about this?
Well, I'd actually had this couples. I wanted to write about couples, sort of how couples interact with one another, and, you know, if that sort of the way couples can project onto each other, and, you know, and how what's going on in your own relationship, you can kind of use another group, you know, your friends as a way to kind of deflect, or, you know, and I was kind of interested in that dynamic for a while, but couldn't ever figure out a script that you know, any story for it or anything that really worked. So it was sort of after Greenberg that it came back up, I think, with sort of notions of getting older and you know, hearing music from my childhood sort of anew, you know, discovering I really liked that Lionel Richie song, All Night Long.
Because listen to it with total sincerity. That and Eye of the Tiger. There's no irony here. Like, he legitimately digs it. So I love all the choices of the songs in it.
Songs, it turns out. I mean, I wrote off. I couldn't bear Lionel Richie when I was a kid, and I was totally wrong.
That takes guts to admit that in front of a big audience full of folks like this. Thank you.
You can't play All Night Long, enough for me at this point.
But music is important to you, I know, in a lot of your films. I mean, if you look at, the use of "Hey You" in Squid and the Whale, or the use of in Frances Ha when she's running to Modern Love, you create a beautiful moment with all of those songs. Music is a huge factor in this film as well. How did you choose the songs that you picked?
Well, a lot of it was, with some of the songs, was sort of the joke again that the younger couple is playing songs from, Ben and Naomi's adolescence. So they're playing, All Night Long, or Eye of the Tiger, or the Psychedelic Furs, or things that are that they had maybe grown up with. And but then I had this idea. Ben and Naomi reminded me a lot of just the way they looked, and seeing them in New York. I was thinking about Kramer versus Kramer, and not that this movie is like that movie in any kind of actual way, but they had the same vibe of Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep, and there's Vivaldi in that movie that plays really beautifully and in a kind of sadder way, and I felt like there was a kind of way to bring. So I started sort of playing around with all this Vivaldi, which is a lot of the sort of score in the movie. And then I was working with James Murphy, who I'd worked with on Greenberg, who's from the band LCD Sound System, and he kind of came up with these other scores that are sort of maybe more Vangelis influenced, sort of a little in the ayahuasca, but then it's also sort of the big confrontation, that
At Lincoln Center?
Yeah, at Lincoln Center, that has this sort of other kind of weight, sort of intensity, but a sense of humor, and it's very beautiful. And so, those were some of the ideas.
So Ben Stiller starred on Greenberg. What was the experience like with you working with him this time, in a totally different kind of film, a lighter film, a film in New York versus Los Angeles? What were the differences there?
Yeah, well, that was my feelings about Los Angeles. This is no.
You hate Los Angeles. Just admit it.
I do. I like Los Angeles. I thought. We had a great time working on that movie, and when I was writing this, I was sort of thinking about a certain kind of comedy. I wanted to do something. The studios used to make movies that were comedies, but about adults, and they were about character, but they could also be broad and kind of mainstream in their, and there were movies that I loved as a kid, like Working Girl or Tootsie, or Broadcast News, and Woody Allen obviously made a lot of them, and so in that I thought, well, I wanted to work with Ben again, so I sort of had his voice, as I was writing this, and I thought it was a way to kind of use Ben's, more his comic iconography sort of in my environment.
It's a great fit for what he does so well, because there's the restlessness, but also a self-deprecation to him. So he seems very comfortable in an uncomfortable situation all the time. Yeah, comfortable in his discomfort. Yes. Adam Driver, too, is pretty great. He's awful, clearly, but also so likable. So how did you know he would be right for this role?
Yeah, well, Adam and I had worked on Frances Ha together, and I felt like casting Adam kind of made sense of the movie to me in a way. It was like, because, we're obviously having fun with, Ben falling in love with this guy, and sort of like going, just giving him the keys to the kingdom in a way. But at the same time, I didn't want to sell the character out. And I felt like Adam is so compelling and so interesting. And I would go there with him. And it's so hard to know what he's really thinking or what his motives are. And Adam, just as an actor, is so kind of up for what the character is, that he didn't feel the need to like defend him or feel like he was had to make him okay. He was just like whatever, he was just totally the guy.
What responses have you gotten to that character? Because I think he invites a lot of really mixed emotions ultimately.
I get the why do you hate hipsters?
Why do you hate hipsters? They're ubiquitous.
Yeah, I was saying the sort of lightest I get is just really angry at hipsters. I think. But I also get sort of that people find him very compelling and even understandable, and like you were saying that he has a side too, and I believe he has a side. I invested as much in his way of looking at things as I did in Ben's, and Ben's journey at the end to kind of unmask Adam is totally quixotic. I mean, you invest in it because he's invested in it. But I mean, what he's looking for is he's trying to find something, find answers to for himself, not for really whether or not Adam did or didn't mess with the timeline.
Right. He won't be satisfied no matter what he hears.
No, I mean it's just not. I think he thinks he will, but he needs to. It's about something else, and it's not Adam's fault that Ben has put all this, responsibility on him.
But there is sort of a generational kind of entitlement, right? I mean, just as people I'm 42, I'm about your age, so we have worked for stuff. There's a generational kind of thing where I should be good at this now, I should have this now, and I blame Twitter for that. No, truly, I think that you capture that as well. Like they want to cut corners, they want to have what they have now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was thinking about this because I'm asked about this sort of, for obvious reasons, this sort of generational thing, and do you think this is true? Do you think this is true of, millennials versus Gen Xers and all of this stuff? And I really don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting because the argument is so about generation. The generational arguments and the divides and aligning it in generations is a kind of fairly recent thing, I feel like, in our history. Because you look at a movie like All About Eve, I don't think you think of Eve as a different generation. You just think of her as young and ambitious. But now it's so like, I don't know, I think people see them really as sort of, figureheads and representatives of their generation, which I don't necessarily in this movie. I think they are, they're, because it takes place now, obviously, I'm engaging in the contemporary culture, and I had to get into technology and all of that, but I do really think it's about youth and about the sort of pressure we put on youth too, and the sort of the expectations we have, the projection, that Ben's, like I said, I feel like Ben's investment in Adam is kind of equally dodgy as whatever Adam is guilty of.
Speaking of our youth, Adam Horowitz is really great in this. And I think of him like young and angry and rapping. And to see him with a baby strapped to his chest is awesome. You guys have been friends for a long time. How did you finally find a place for him in one of your films?
Well, I called him around Greenberg because before we cast Rhys Ifans, who played Ben's friend in Greenberg, I thought maybe Adam could be a good fit for that, but he was unavailable and I think touring or something, and so I just always wanted to see him act again. I thought he was really good when he acted years ago, and I just knowing him, I just knew he'd be really good. He's so, and I didn't really even think until later, till he was there on the set with that baby, and that the added sort of poignance of it, of that seeing Ad Rock as a middle-aged dad,
But what's funny is that he brings this warmth and this stability to a film where everyone is changing constantly. Like he's your voice of reason. He's your center of stability, which is ironic, given that he was a Beastie Boy.
Right.
He's great in this. You are a dad now. We were talking a little bit ago about we both have 5-year-old sons. How does being a dad now change how you view film and how you make film?
Well, it makes me wish I, made movies that he could see, now, so it makes me want to make younger films. I mean, I've been involved in some animated things, but
Has he seen Fantastic Mr. Fox?
he's seen that, yeah. And he is, yeah. So and you know, I also will will abide pretty much any whatever bad children's movie comes out if he likes it. I mean, if he likes it, I like it.
Mm-hmm. He was asking about the Ibsen quote at the start, the title card at the start.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I've always been interested in Ibsen, and but I had already written the script, but I saw a production of it that Wallace Shawn and Andre Gregory did in New York, and they, if you don't know, they sort of tend to work on these things for years. They did like Vanya on 42nd Street, and there's sort of these ongoing sort of rehearsal / productions, and they're really just kind of unique and amazing. And I loved this performance, and it's Wally had translated it, and so when I heard that exchange, I thought like, wow, that feels like it could be kind of just something. I didn't know necessarily I would even use it, and so I asked him, he's a friend of mine, I asked him if he would send me the script, and and so I tried it out, and I actually put it, sometimes on a PDF, like if you don't often, some of the pages in the title pages get lost. So, I forgot that I put it in, and somebody had printed out the script when we started shooting, and it was like, oh, I really like this quote, and I was like, oh, right, yes, no, of course, yeah, for the master builder, so then I thought I'd try. I mean, every time, really, when we were mixing the movie, even every time we when you mix, you kind of have to keep going over certain things, and every time those quotes came up, I would just sort of think of like audiences just thinking, oh, really? We got to read this before the movie starts. It's still going, but I love it, and I think it's worth it, and then the Paul McCartney song at the end of Let Him In, which that came even a little bit later, and I sort of thought, yeah, let's do this. And then somebody actually reminded me that Greta's first line of Greenberg is, "Are you going to let me in?" when she's driving. So clearly this has been some preoccupation of mine, but I don't know if I understand it.
Yes, her question is, how autobiographical is this film? Was there a mentor-mentee thing that went horribly wrong?
It's required to ask me how autobiographical. Really? I'm going to do this? No, I don't have anything like that. To me, like I said, it's in a way, it was a kind of like, I was thinking of more of like a psychological and emotional idea of like how sort of nostalgia and, obsession with youth can kind of destroy you in some way. And I made them people. But, I was sort of coming at it more from a kind of, sort of interior, way.
Peter Yarrow. How did we choose him?
Yeah, Peter Yarrow is plays Ira Mandelstam, the subject of Ben's long gestating documentary, and he is from Peter, Paul, and Mary, if you don't know who he is. That was we wanted somebody who had some sort of authority, that you'd kind of, as soon as you saw him, whether you recognized him or not, you just something kind of commanding about him, and feel like the subject of a documentary. And so I'd sort of thought maybe of finding like a real academic, or but I didn't want an actor like that, at least that a character actor, anyone that you'd sort of recognize immediately or feel like, who is that? Why do I know that? But and so he actually came and read for me, and it was really kind of great experience to work with him, and he's amazing, and he was so good, and he really like prepared it, and he had it down, and none of us understood what he was saying. But
The question is, how much of an influence might Woody Allen's Crimes and Misdemeanors have been on this film?
Probably so, yeah. I mean, those are sort of the movies I was thinking about. I mean, not even so specifically. I mean, I've absorbed so much of that stuff. I don't really even know anymore what I'm stealing or, but that is a great movie also about sort of, various levels of sort of ethical, misconduct, and if you can call murder ethical misconduct. But certainly on the Woody Allen side. I mean, I think, he made so many kind of great ones that are about people, but, are incredibly funny. And, when I discovered him as a kid, it was sort of like, I thought it was like, I couldn't believe it, I mean, so, but yeah, I'm sure that and, many other movies have been pilfered to make this one.
Thank you guys so much for sticking around. Thank you for your lovely answers. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.
Beautiful class.
Oh, thanks.
I really loved your film, Power Relief.
You've seen it.
That scene with the dogs around the garbage. How did you stage that?
Those dogs were just there, and I said, hey, shoot those dogs.
Beautiful.
Why do you suddenly want to hang out with a couple of 25-year-olds?
We were just 25. I mean, we weren't, but,
We're the boring couple with a baby. What have you guys been doing?
We met this interesting couple.
You came!
He's a young documentarian, and she makes ice cream.
How old are they?
25, 26.
26, 27.
They're children.
Yeah, 9 years ago they couldn't vote.
I love his shoes. I have some wingtips here somewhere. I stopped wearing them when I got shin splints.
What kind of class is this again?
Hip-hop.
And true gangsters don't speak.
Something about being around them that energizes you.
You have arthritis in your knee.
Arthritis? Arthritis?
Yes, I usually just say it once.
I remember when this song was just considered bad. But it's working. If I'm gonna be totally honest with myself, I don't think I'm ever gonna die. I know that's crazy. It's crazy.
We've got this ayahuasca ceremony this weekend with Jamie and Darby.
What's an ayahuasca ceremony?
We drink this sludgy liquid and you hallucinate and vomit up your demons.
Okay. Well, we're just having a cookout and maybe playing charades.
I wish you'd look at me the way you look at Jamie and Darby. When we first met, you wooed me with romantic emails.
It wouldn't make sense for me to send you emails now. We're in the same room all the time.
We don't know how else to say this, but we're worried about you guys.
Do you think that Jamie came to my class because he knew that I was married to you? This was all so he could meet your dad?
The world isn't a conspiracy against you.
It's all a pose. It's like he once saw a sincere person and he's been imitating him ever since. Go back inside.
For the first time in my life, I stopped thinking of myself as a child imitating an adult.
You feel that way too.
What is that, hoedown?
Hip hop.